the final 3 rounds of the 2009 Speed World Challenge Championship. Welcome to the WorldChallengeDish.com Road America Grand Prix, presented by StopTech. The 8th round of the championship for both Touring and GT. There is a wheel and light system equipped parade car, and we are going to go on board with Tony Rivera, a GT car, Tom, for one of the best and spectacular laps in America.
Well, that's what everybody says, and when you get around this course, you find that about 75% of the time you are at wide open throttle, going through turn number 2 here. Now, there's a long run down into one of the signature turns as we go all the way through here, all the way up to top gear, almost as fast going here as you are on the front straightaway, and then get way down for turn number 5. And then a run up to the Toyota Bridge, another left-hander here, which goes into a fairly complicated part of the course. You keep your eye on the bridges here to find out where you are. Very fast through here, and now down into the carousel. Different techniques to get through the carousel, and you'll find some guys are on and off the throttle, some guys are just carrying even throttle through there. And then, of course, the glorious kink. Everybody says you can't go flat through here, but don't tell that to the World Challenge guys. Down here to another right-hander, which does present itself quite often as a passing zone. And then a complicated little rhythm section back up onto the straightaway, which is one of the longest in the business, Greg.
And as we complete the lap, we are going to go for our start command to beautiful Beatrice Douglas, whose dad, Cam, is with Optima Batteries. And with that, this World Challenge Touring Car field comes to life. They'll be heading out on their installation and presentation lap. And then, of course, they'll assume those spots on the grid as we get ready to go racing. But speaking of the grid, we've got to check in with Tom in the coin toss.
This is your top 5: Charles Espenlaub, Patrick Lindsay, Pierre Kleinubing, Jason Saney, and Kuno Whitmer. The honor is yours, Charles. Please call this in the air. If you win, the grid stays the same. If you lose, the grid inverts.
Heads.
Tails it is. The grid inverts. Charles Espenlaub loses the pole, and his good friend and his drafting partner, Kuno Whitmer, takes it over. Kuno Whitmer, sometimes it pays to have friends in different camps.
You know, I feel for Charles. I lost it in New Jersey, so I feel what he's feeling right now, but we got a great car, and I'm sure Charles is a really good car, too. He got a really good lap in qualifying, and it won't take much until he comes knocking on my door, that's for sure.
And we've got some great chase cam onboards for you. In the upper left, it'll be Eric Foss. Upper right, Seth Thomas. Lower left, Pierre Kleinubing. And lower right, Jason Saney. And we'll see them in anger when we come back. Welcome back to the WorldChallengeDish.com Road America Grand Prix, presented by StopTech. 8th round of the Speed World Challenge Touring Cars. Here is your starting lineup with the inversion. Kuno Whitmer, who qualified 5th, starts on the pole. Next to him will be Jason Saney. Row 2, Pierre Kleinubing and Pat Lindsay. Then we go to the 3rd row, and that will be Charles Espenlaub with Eric Foss, the 2 teammates. Remember, Espenlaub, the quickest qualifier. Row 4, Peter Cunningham will be on the inside. James Clay, the defending race winner, on the outside. Next row, Nick Asayan driving for the Bimmer World Gear Wrench team with teammate Seth Thomas. Then we go to row 6, Brandon Peterson and Bob Woodhouse making his touring car debut, running one of the real-time cars. We have red lights. When they go out, we have green racing, and there we go. We are underway, and a nice start by Kuno Whitmer, and a smart move right there. Jason Saney just sort of fainting over a little bit, trying to protect, but couldn't get it done. And Pierre Kleinubing trying to steam up the inside. He's got it done. Lindsay in that maroon and white Mazda around the outside, and Tom, he is able to slot in and at least hang on to 3rd.
You know, going into this turn number 1 from a standing start's a whole different deal than you do in practice or in qualifying. A good job by everybody involved here. Here's a look from the back of Jason Saney. You see how busy it is going down into turn number 2.
Then that long run up and over this rise, heading up through the trees toward turn 5. And already some door-to-door duels developing. This one by Pat Lindsay on the right, and on the inside is Pierre Kleinubing. And Lindsay wants that spot, but this is the best line, is inside where Kleinubing is. Lindsay wisely checks up just a little bit, and boy, there was enough room for a piece of paper maybe between those 2 bumpers, but he makes it work. But now, Tom, it is real time, 1-2.
As these guys come up to speed now. Whoa, big time hit for Nick Asayan. Jason Saney gets crossed up, gets a little bit sideways. Nick Asayan really nowhere to go, collects his door, and then spins again off to the driver's right. Very lucky, Greg, not to get collected by somebody else.
Yeah, collected one of the Sargento cheese signs, but he's obviously going to lose a lot of time. Meanwhile, a huge battle as a result of that for fifth. Saney gets slowed up, and Cunningham and Foss all over the back of him. Here is the battle for third. Lindsay now feeling immense pressure from the 73 of Charles Espinlaub. And let's go back, Tom, take a look at the start from Essayan's perspective. He got a blinder.
Well, Nick wasn't completely enamored with his qualifying spot, but just after about 3 or 4 seconds, he's now running with the leaders, which is exactly where he wants to be. Unfortunately, it ended with contact with Saney.
Meanwhile, there's that lead group of 4 heading toward Canada Corner out of the kink. Then Saney hounded by Cunningham, who is being further hounded by Eric Foss. Cunningham going a bit protective as they get down to Canada Corner. And look at Foss, swings out a little bit, dives underneath. See if he made this work. Oh, did he get a drive off of that turn up into 13, the Billy Mitchell corner? He's through and has picked up 6th.
Jason Saney, in the meantime, looks back at that fight. Now he's got a little bit of a gap he can work with. Meanwhile, Foss and Cunningham, no love lost between these two drivers. They found each other at Audubon. They found each other at Mosport. And now they're in a pitched battle again here at Road America, Greg.
Yeah, they've had their moments certainly on the track, and it continues once again. Meanwhile, Charles Espinlaub, again, qualified on pole, his 2nd consecutive pole, but then by virtue of the coin flip, ends up inverted, is trying to chase down Lindsay and get into that trio that's just in front of him. And look at this now, that battling with Foss and Cunningham is allowing the Bimmers to come through, and a beautiful move. James Clay dives down underneath teammate Seth Thomas and picks up a spot. And James Clay, this is where last year, remember, he got his first ever win in World Challenge competition in the Bimmer World Gear Wrench BMW. He loves this place, and it's showing early. A beautiful day here at the WorldChallengeDish.com Road America Grand Prix presented by StopTech and these touring cars in the World Challenge Touring Cars 8th round, putting on an equally spectacular show. P.D. Cunningham now gets the run on Foss. Foss, though, protects to the inside as they get down into turn 1. And, boy, P.D.'s going to brave it out around the outside. Foss gives him some room. We haven't seen that all the time this year with these two. There's been some contact. Still, door handle down into turn 3. This time Foss gets through, and Petey had to cover in a hurry because right there was the 36 of James Clay, and it's not enough. Clay, using that torquey BMW motor, Tom, turns underneath. He is up and by. We hop on board with Seth Thomas, and Seth now closing in as well. Momentum. It's huge.
It's going to be a big one down as we go down into turn number 5 here. James Clay sees the opportunity, and he's going to have an opportunity to take 2 here, Greg. Takes 2, and then slides off to the driver's right, and just that fast, he loses 1, and it looks like Cunningham's going to come up along the left side. He's going to lose 2. Holy smoke, this is really momentum racing. Nobody giving any quarter, Greg.
Nobody giving quarter, but everybody giving space, and that is really, really spectacular stuff. And right there, it would have been very easy for one of those drivers at turn 6, a tough place to make that pass, to grind on each other. And so they wait a little bit later in the lap and grind again. Down into turn 5, I believe. Oh, and there's the look. That's what it's like from the driver's perspective, Tom, when you run over what they call the alligator teeth here at Road America.
And now they are big down there. When you run over them, you can feel it in your own teeth, and it's enough to grind off the momentum. Enough momentum so that Cunningham could get back up there, but this fight is not over. Foss, Cunningham, Clay, and Seth Thomas ganging up with James Clay, and the draft is going to become useful when they get back to the front straightaway.
Yeah, grind off some enamel, too, when you go over that. That's just so rough. But sometimes that is the line you've got to use when you're going to make an aggressive pass in such close quarters racing. And it doesn't get a whole lot closer than this. And Seth Thomas sitting back, watching what's unfolding in front of him. And James Clay, Tom, relentless, trying to get back around PD. And he knows he can do it because he did it less than a half a lap ago. He can get back in front of these guys. This is some spectacular stuff. And remember, folks, this isn't even for the lead. This is back in the pack just a little bit. You see the cars already climbing up the hill. That is your lead group. These guys still in all doing some incredible battling.
You need all the horsepower, all the torque to come up this hill, but now you're up into top gear under the starter's bridge, going as fast as you're going to go on the course. We rejoin the leaders here as Kuno Whitmer leads his teammate Pierre Kleinubing. Greg, you got to believe that these guys by now are talking on the radio and trying their best to shake off the 57 car of Pat Lindsay.
And Lindsay has been brilliantly quick right since the get-go of the weekend. He unloaded fast. He was fastest in the combined practice sessions. Here's that battle once again. Foss, Cunningham, James Clay and Seth Thomas, and it is a great battle. Interesting story in the qualifying. Espenlaub's pole came from a draft from, of all people, Kuno Whitmer, and he said if it had been flip-flop and Kuno had been behind me, he'd be on pole. And so he said, I don't feel too bad about Kuno getting the coin flip and getting up there. Meanwhile, Clay, speaking of getting up there, looks to the inside, and then PD covers, so Clay wisely, knowing what he pulled on those guys the last lap when he steamed down the inside, just gets back in position so he doesn't lose the momentum. Still in all, runs a little bit wide over those gator teeth once again, loses maybe a car length as they get up underneath the bridge in turn 6. That's an amazing corner. Blind approach, you have to feel the braking zone, because if you brake too late, you're launching into the air. Ooh, Petey out of 7th, back end of that Acura, swings out. He saves it down into the braking zone at turn 8. One of these 2 downhill braking zones at this track, Tom, that are so challenging, but when you get them right, oh yeah.
PD and Pierre Kleinubing like to set these cars up a little bit loose so that they rotate at the apex. For those people standing along the fence, and you and I have both heard it several times where they say, are those Acuras rear-wheel drive? Because they sure look like that when they come off the corner. It's just a matter of preference for PD and Kleinubing, and I know Kuno Whitmer has adopted it as well.
Meanwhile, up front of you saw Lindsay there, somebody dropping the tires off, and that's the kink, folks. So you think they're not running on the edge? Absolutely. And keep in mind, you remember last year, if you watch this, Cunningham takes a look at Foss, then says no into Canada. Remember Pierre Kleinubing and Jason Saney side by side through the kink last year. Sometimes you suck it up when you're in a great battle, and boy, are we in the midst of a couple of good ones. One at the front, the one we've been enjoying in the battle for 6, and Nick is saying, oh, that is turn 14 onto the front straight. He got it wrong. Gravel. He's beached. We'll be back. We are back about half distance here in the 8th round of the World Challenge Touring Car Championship. It's the WorldChallengeDish.com Road America Grand Prix presented by StopTech, and we have a couple of extraordinary battles going. We've been following this one for 6th, led by that blue Pro Parts Tri-Point Mazda of Eric Foss, then the red line, real-time racing Acura of Petey Cunningham, but here comes the Bimmer World Gear Wrench BMW of James Clay, this time trying to get the pedal. They touch again, and they touch yet again as they get down into turn number 5, and again Petey comes up. There may have been another touch right there as he tried to check up and get down underneath. He's there. The question is, can he deep brake under the bridge? Well, he was thinking about it, but James Clay said, not this time. I'm going to stay put around the outside. This gives Clay the inside through that downhill, off-camber, high-speed, turn 7 sweeper. They are still side by side. Petey dropping the left side tires into the gravel over the exit curb, and coming with him, giving him a little shove, is Seth Thomas. That caused Petey to lock up the brakes, but boy, got him through that corner in a hurry, Tom.
I don't think Seth Thomas realized exactly what he was doing there. It was that little love tap that actually carried the momentum, able to get PD through, and gave everybody who's watching this another idea of what kind of car control this driver really has.
Yeah, Petey Cunningham is pretty special, and of course this is his home track. The team based in the Milwaukee area. He's driven here so many laps, he knows exactly what he can get away with. Then we go to the front, where there's been a lead change. Pierre Kleinubing has been able to sneak around Kuno Whitmer, and now leads it with Whitmer second, Lindsay there in third. Up out of Canada corner through turn 13, heading toward Fort. Oh, and Whitmer suddenly slows. That was dramatic. He has just pulled way off to the outside of the track as the rest of the field comes steaming up, trying to let everybody have that line, not to counter that. And there, nice move there. He's going to obviously cut over and try and head in to the pit lane as Seth Thomas uses the road and the runoff access area to control that BMW, trying to get a good run through turn 13. And Whitmer, Tom, heading up pit lane.
Yeah, he gets up pit lane, and all of a sudden he gets fire into the engine. What a bad break for Kuno Whitmer. Got to go all the way down pit lane. And Greg, this is a long one at about 50 miles an hour before he can rejoin. Bad luck on Kuno Whitmer's part.
Meanwhile, we are on board with Petey Cunningham, and you can see James Clay drives around the outside down the front straight. But as we get down into turn 1, Petey Cunningham closes right back up all over the bumper, and they added about 8 feet of runoff on the curbing in turn 1, and now the drivers, of course, just use that as well. Can't even see that they're on the racetrack sometimes coming through that part of the track. Little bobble there by Clay, Tom. Is that going to be enough for PD to be able to get a run and do something down at a 5.
It's the fourth time these guys have had a duel down here, but this is the first time James Clay has an opportunity to open it up a little bit before Cunningham can get down there. As you said, it's a blind braking zone. He's got to get through here smoothly to be able to carry that speed up to the Toyota bridge. Cunningham does make up some room, and you can see he bobbles on the gator teeth again. Cunningham drives right up alongside.
Boy, they have been side by side through turn 6 more than I have ever seen. Not an area where usually you see that, but when you've got cars and drivers of this caliber, I guess you could pull it off. We've seen them do remarkable things before, certainly. So Cunningham back in front of James Clay heading down into turn 8. And this is where Seth gave PD that little nudge the last lap. This time that battle between PD and Clay has Seth just a little bit further back at this point, and then into the carousel. Over a 90-degree turn, but Tom, it just goes on seemingly for a week.
And there's all sorts of different techniques that these guys used to get here. I want to go back to James Clay. He won here last year, as you mentioned, a very high-quality driver. 4 times he's tried to deal with Peter Cunningham, and the duel has been clean. They did trade paint a little bit, but nobody actually ran each other off the road. This might be one of the great duels of 2009 in touring car, Greg.
I don't think there's any question. The cut and thrust nature of it has been spectacular, and as you said, there's been a little rubbing, but there hasn't been any clanking and knocking them off into gravel or the like. That's what makes it special. And speaking of special, I think we've got another duel that might be starting to form up. There is the 73. That's the Pro Part Stop Tech Tri-Point Mazda of Charles Espenlaub, the pole sitter. But remember, started 5th because of the inversion. And he has been closing in on the gentleman who's been so fast already this entire race and this whole weekend, Sloan Security's Horton Autosport Mazda of Lindsay.
Neither of these drivers, of course, in contention for the Drivers' Championship, but both collecting valuable points for the Manufacturers' Championship. And we've talked about it before, how important this battle between Acura and Mazda is. Here's another battle, Greg.
Well, it's rejoined. You talked about how good this was, and it's not done yet. Cunningham with Clay feigning inside. Cunningham covers. Clay goes outside, and then it's just deep in the brakes into a very quick turn. That is balancing a car. And again, these two so close. Oh, look at PD. The whole thing just sort of flat slides a little bit. He just lets it rotate and feeds it throttle with that front wheel drive system. And Clay, no answer for him, but he may have got a good run as a result out of 3. A little bit better exit speed. He did. He looks inside. PD right down the middle of the track. Clay again has no option but to try to go to the outside, down into 5. The braking zone. Clay noses ahead, but PD's going to just deep brake down in there. And does he hang on to it? Somehow, Tommy makes that corner and doesn't even get way over on those alligator teeth. These two guys, this isn't a battle, it isn't a duel, it's a war.
It's unbelievable. James Clay that time just said, oh, why bother? And this time goes off of the alligator teeth on the exit of 6, and now Seth Thomas rejoins the battle. These guys are like a street gang setting out after P.D. Cunningham, who adds insult to injury by dropping a big block of dust right in front of him.
And speaking of that battle for second, while we were watching that incredible duel, Espenlaub has been able to get down and underneath Lindsay. So Charles Espenlaub marching his way back toward the front. But look at the gap that up front Pierre Kleinubing has. We'll be back. Welcome back, everybody. The WorldChallengeDish.com Road America Grand Prix presented by Stop Tech. 8th round of the World Challenge Touring Car Championship. And we are beginning our last lap as Pierre Kleinubing looking to do something amazingly he has never done before, nor has the real-time team with the Acura program. And Tom, that's going to win here at Road America.
It's almost unbelievable when you consider these are among the winningest drivers in World Challenge history between Kleinubing and Cunningham, never being able to get it done at their own home track. And remember, they used to be based just down the road at West Bend. They have won a race, but that's when one-off year when Peter Cunningham was driving for Nissan. I remember him talking about that Sentra and its great straight-line handling. But this one has an opportunity for the team in the form of Pierre Kleinubing, who is not letting back here. You can see he's trying to get everything out of this car as we get these great shots of Pierre Kleinubing in the final lap.
You know, it was the 08 Sebring was his last win. Since then, he's had 10 podiums, but never the top step of the box. That's just unbelievable for this legendary driver in World Challenge. But he's got a pretty comfortable margin in hand over that blue Mazda. of Charles Espinlav. So Pierre just has to bring it home. And I've got to just go back real quick, Tom. We were talking about car control and the like. Remember the save he made last year?
Unbelievable.
When Jim Daniels tinked him going into turn one, and somehow he held on to it. This guy has got some of the most immaculate car control in the business, and working that carousel one last time, maybe looking to end this wind drought, and Charles Espinlav behind him is just hoping against hope that Pierre makes that little mistake. Not likely.
You know, they're running exactly the same number on this final lap to this point as Pierre Kleiniger. As you can see, still sliding that car through the corner. He doesn't know how to do it any other way, Greg. One of the finest drivers ever to get behind the wheel of a tin top in North American racing history. And finally, he's going to be able to get this monkey off his back. Got one more corner to go, sir.
Down through Canada corner, now up toward the Billy Mitchell corner, where that bridge used to be, but still, they kept that blind approach to it. You turn in on faith and you turn in fast and way over to the right. Use that little bit of access road if you have to. And you can see Espinlav's closed it up, but I think Pierre, even though he's running wide, he's doing it well within himself a little bit. Espinlav giving it everything he possibly can. Here's the run up the hill, and for Pierre Kleiniger personally and for the team that he loves so much, it is done. A win at Road America for real-time racing, for Acura, and for Pierre Kleiniger. Espinlav will come home second. Pat Lindsay topping a great weekend with a third-place finish and just some incredible drives throughout the pack. Let's get down to Victory Circle and Pierre.
Pierre Kleiniger finishes up first place here at round number 8 at Road America. It's an important race. It's kind of the hometown race for real-time racing. I can't say enough about what you did. Incredible car control, and especially under trying circumstances, the track looked very slick.
Yeah, it was, but it's, you know, first of all, I always want to win the home for real-time. I've done it once, so it didn't take it home, but finally we did it. It's been so many years we've been trying. It feels so good to win the home in front of this beautiful crowd. You know, they love us here, and finally I was able to deliver it home.
Kuno Whitmer led for a little while, and you were running right in his wheel tracks. Any communication between you and him in the cars?
Yeah, we were trying to run away from the Mazda guys, and we were drafting pretty good until he made a mistake. Then I got by him, and he tried to get by me again in the one, and I'm like, hey, let's work with me now for a while and see what happens later. And then his car unfortunately died there for some electrical problems that he's been having all weekend.
Pierre Kleiniger wins round number 8 here at Road America.
Now you can see the grin. There's the celebration. Let's talk some points here because we're getting into these final rounds of the championship. Saney able to stay in the lead. Kleiniger second. Cunningham, as you can see, he would have been 10 points closer, but he had a penalty for contact with Clay at Mid-Ohio. Acura closes up to with 2 of Mazda. Here is your Auto Week move of the race. Kleiniger's pass of Whitmer in turn 8, ended up for the win.
From your friends at Stock Tech Brakes and the entire team at Optimal Batteries, gentlemen, start your engines.
And with that command, the rumble begins. The thunder at Road America. It's World Challenge GT as part of the WorldChallengeDish.com Road America Grand Prix presented by Stop Tech. Let's get down to the coin toss.
Your pole sitter, James Safranis. Next to him, Kuno Whitmer in his first drive in GT. Then Tony Rivera, Brandon Davis, and Eric Curran. James, the honor is yours. Please call it in the air. If you win, you keep the pole. If you lose, the grid inverts.
Heads.
Nice. Heads it is. James Safranis keeps the pole. You know, there's a lot of people here that didn't think that a Porsche would take the pole when you're racing against Vipers, Mustangs, and, of course, those Corvettes. But you did it, and you get to keep it.
Well, I was one of those. I didn't think we were going to get the pole, but I knew we had a good car. People don't realize how much handling is a factor here, just getting out of these high-speed corners, which run you down the long straights. We worked on both mid-corner speed and the braking zones here, where Dino was a lot faster under braking, up to a half a second. And yesterday's session was all about bedding in the Stop Tech brakes, allowing us to go really deep in the corners. Tony was catching me, but in the braking zone into 5, and then from that point forward, I pulled away and was really confident. The car was actually perfect. It had to be to run that kind of lap time, better than we ever projected. But GMG did an amazing job. Stop Tech Brakes, the sponsor here this week, and obviously proved their worth with the pole, being able to brake deep into the 3 big brake zones. So I'm happy for the team. GMG, Stop Tech, pole is very good.
And let's take a look at our Chase Cam onboards. 4 of them on the upper left, Tony Rivera, the Taxmasters Porsche, Randy Popes, the K-Pax Volvo. Lower left, Dino Crescentini is driving the Stop Tech Global Motorsports Group Porsche. And on the right, Gunter Schaldog now driving the Lala Motorsports Brass Monkey Racing Porsche, making the change from the Viper. Here's your starting lineup. James Safranis his third career pole, second of this season, alongside Kuno Whitmer, debuting in the GT category. Row 2, Tony Rivera alongside Brandon Davis, your point leader. Row 3, Eric Kern. This is where he turned his season around last year. He's joined by Dino Crescentini. Row 4, Randy Pobst and Andy Pilgrim, all Volvos. Row 5, Mike Borkowski driving the Lala Motorsports Viper, and then Gunter Schaldock, as we said, now in a Porsche. Then Jason Daskalos. And alongside Jeff Courtney from nearby Slinger, Wisconsin. Row 7, Bill Ziegler and Brian Kubinski, a home track for him, if you will. Row 8, Rich Marzial and Tony Gaples from Illinois. And then in row 9, Sonny Whelan, who did have some issues in qualifying. And we'll see what he's able to mount from the back of the pack. The lights are red. We're just that close to racing. They're gone. We're green, except Sofronis. He doesn't move, and somehow Tony Rivera was able to get by with just a little bit of a touch. Brian Kubinski runs way wide in the Corvette at the back, but Kuno Whitmer, his first time in the GT category, driving the Bob Woodhouse Viper, round the outside of everybody and into the lead. Rivera and Brandon Davis, top three. And look at Curran trying to get away around the Porsche of Dino Crescentini. Couldn't quite get it done. But once again, after a great qualifying effort, Tom, for James Sofronis, bad luck again.
Oh, it's just so bad for James Sofronis. You know, he's had nothing but bad luck when he's had luck. Here's a look at Eric Kern getting around the outside of James Sofronis, but it was Kuno Whitmer with that slight advantage as Tony Rivera's heart had to be in his throat. What am I going to do with this? Kuno Whitmer able to get by and now leads his first lap ever in the GT category in World Challenge.
And I'll tell you, watching Kuno this weekend as he came to grips with that Viper, not having a lot of familiarity with it, extremely fast, then off, fast, then off. And then the off started to go away, and it just got to be fast.
You know, he's spectacular that way. It's amazing how much he can go off and not wreck. Here's a look at Gunter Schaldock. And from Schaldock's car, you see a masterful bit of driving on most sport winners Jason Daskalos' part. Now we go back to the front, Craig.
Yeah, he came through, then started to go right, then saw the parked car, went left again, avoided everybody, and up front, Whitmer has Rivera all over the back of him, and already a little bit of a gap, not huge, but a bit of a gap. Oh, and look at Whitmer, brakes for the kink, back end, steps out, and that's something he's not used to. He's usually driving front drive cars, and you brake on turn in with a rear drive car. Interesting things happen. He saved it that time, but it cost him momentum. Here comes Rivera. Rivera is through, and as Kuno tried to cut back underneath, Rivera did a beautiful job, didn't he, Tom, of exiting 12 and getting right in the line where Kuno was going to need to go. Beautiful job by Tony Rivera.
Kuno got awfully busy there on the just after the kink, trying out things, trying to make sure his brakes worked. Rivera saw that opportunity and then smooth as silk came underneath there and made it pay off at the end, which after all, Greg's the most important part.
Absolutely. Oh, and more problems for Brian Kubinski as he runs wide. That's now turn 14, so that's the second trip in the grass he's had, and it's just the completion of the opening few laps. Meanwhile, here comes Curran looking down the inside of Crescentini into turn 1. Crescentini defends. Curran tucks back in. And I mentioned that this was where Curran turned his season around last year. He had had a tough start to the season, came home second here, and it really brought him for the last few races. Just kind of gave that team a little bit of momentum. Right now, though, he sits in 5th, Crescentini in front of him. Then that beautiful black ACS Sun Microsystems Mustang, a points leader, Brandon Davis.
Look at all the different manufacturers in the top 6. You've got Porsche, Viper, Corvette, and then Mustang, and then Volvo, as we see all of the manufacturers being represented here. Volvo's got away gingerly, as they are wont to do, but now Randy Pobst has brought the fight, and not too far behind is that number 8 car of Andy Pilgrim, who's got the flu rather badly today, but he's a professional driver. He sucked it up, and he's out there competing, Greg.
Well, I'll tell you, that's what you have to do. And, of course, Andy, thinking about what happened with him in the race last year, he had that monstrous explosion going down into turn 5 that changed the complexion of the race for some of the people that were chasing him.
It also changed his complexion a little bit.
Yeah.
And in addition to his eyebrows, it didn't have much going on there afterwards either.
One of the more spectacular moments in World Challenge Racing at Road America was that one. And there you just saw the green Kenda Tires Viper from Jeff Courtney, a little bit wide in the carousel, but able to hang on to it. And there is Tony Rivera, just absolutely on rails through the kink. And I think Kuno Whitmer, boy, I'll tell you what, that little bit of braking as he was turning into the King, that opened the eyes up, and it opened up the opportunity for Rivera. He wasted no time. But look at this great queue behind them, Tom. You talked about the variety of all of the vehicles, and the talent behind the wheel of these vehicles is stellar. Here's a good one, Eric Kern.
Eric Kern has an opportunity here to reprise that win that he came up with last year. Eric Kern is such a great talent, not just in World Challenge, but you'll find him in other categories as well, including stock cars that he occasionally runs for the Whelen Engineering team. And Teddy Marsh, now here's that number 99 Kenda car. Jeff Courtney goes around.
Oh, and Tony Gaples noses in. Had a bit of target fixation for a moment, then went left and was able to just slip by. For a minute there, it looked like there was going to be an unpleasant meeting of the noses.
Meanwhile, Jeff Courtney's in there using his cell phone saying, honey, you're never going to just guess what just happened to me. Tony Gaples, if not for the quick reaction at the very end of that, that would have been a very ugly crash.
Well, and that's a classic example of when you're locked up, you can't do anything. And as soon as he came off of the brake, he was able to make that turn. Let's go back for an onboard replay from Jeff's perspective.
So he gets into the grass here. You can see he takes a downshift, a little bit of right hand down, and all of a sudden at the end he loops. Thinks, okay, now I'm going to gather this up, and holy smoke, here comes Gaples.
That's a classic for Tony. I got it, I don't got it. Go left. And he did a beautiful job of it. Meanwhile, now Kern starting to really heap the pressure on Brandon Davis. And Davis, you know, so many of these guys, Tom, last year at this race had so much happening. Brandon Davis looked to be set with a great finish, and then some contact late in the race and ended up dropping him completely out of the play and really dashed his championships. He still mathematically had a chance coming into this race last year.
And this season, the way he sits on top of the leaderboard has been through sheer consistency. They've got all the bugs worked out of this car now, and Brandon Davis has matured into a driver. You know, you can't say he's been points racing, but he stood on the podium virtually every single time he's made an appearance. And at Mid-Ohio, he finally stood atop of that podium. So with 3 races left to go, you could probably forgive him for thinking about the championship rather than individual race wins, Greg.
And, you know, one of the things, too, that can change your mindset about how you go about your racing. When you've got a nice margin in the championship points, you may opt to be a little bit conservative at times. And as we are early in the going here at Road America in the 8th round of the Speed World Challenge GT Championship, up front, Tony Rivera. Will he become the first repeat winner of the season in the 8th round? That tells you something about how close this championship is. The competition is fierce. Oh, and Gunter Schaldock, that is a huge off. That's on the exit of Canada Corner. And usually that's a trailing throttle oversteer kind of a moment. You lift and you just spin drivers right. And Tom, he's had some impact into the barriers over there. The corner workers looking at him. Apparently he is okay, so we're going to step away for just a minute. Welcome back to the WorldChallengeDish.com Road America Grand Prix presented by StopTech, 8th round of the World Challenge GT Championship. And Tom Natcher, let's go back, take a look from Gunter's onboard as to what happened.
Well, as you can see, Andy Pilgrim slowing way up at the exit to the kink, and you can see a lot of oil on Gunter Schaldock's windshield there. That's going to give you some indication of what's going on inside Andy Pilgrim's car. And now through these 2 little lefts and headed down to Canada Corner, Gunter just leaves it a little bit late in the braking, gets a little bit too early into the apex, and that's what happens. You run out of road and you end up in the tire wall. Bad luck for Gunter Schaldock in his first drive in this Brass Monkey racing car. Meanwhile, more side-by-side, Greg.
Dino Crescentini watching the duel in front of him, and Eric Kern in the Whelen Engineering Corvette not only trying but does drive right around the outside of Brandon Davis in turn 5. Brandon in that black and green Applied Computer Solutions Sun Microsystems Mustang, but that little bit of side-by-side racing has allowed Dino and the StopTech Global Motorsports Group Porsche to close up all over the back of Brandon. And the interesting thing, Tom, was that exit out of 5, because Brandon was sort of pinched to the inside, cost him a bunch of momentum, even with the big horsepower.
Dino Crescentini capitalizes on that, and Brandon Davis has to go defensive to keep that number 4 StopTech Brakes Porsche behind him. Look what happens in front of him. Meanwhile, Curran just drives away from both of them.
Boy, and Eric Kern, there's something about coming to Road America, was in the midst of a tough season, and making it turn things around. Let's go back now and take a look at what may have happened with Andy Pilgrim. There goes the Gunter Schaldock car just streaming by. Andy in trouble.
Günther Schaldag gets by and then kind of forgets himself, just leaves things a little bit late. And as you can see, as the time he gets through here, it's already all over. It just depends where he's going to go off. There goes his bumper cover, and Andy Pilgrim slides through and thinks, oh boy, I hope I didn't cause that.
Well, some oil from Pilgrim on Günther's tires. I guess we'll never really know. Meanwhile, Tony Rivera leads, and now, folks, leads big. Huge margin. Kuno Whitmer in the pits. Mechanical problem. We'll update you on that. And as Eric Kern earlier was coming through the pack, Dino Crescentini throwing everything at him to try and keep him behind him. Couldn't quite get it done. Meanwhile, back at a busy turn 14, Daskalos now coming through. Then one of the K-Pax Volvos, that is Randy Popst, as he's climbing the hill. And Tom, these cars are so quick, but they continue to have transmission issues.
Well, everybody gives these guys way less credit than they deserve.
Oh, yeah.
They just started this season. These K-Pax Volvos were just an idea back in February of this year. They come to the track, they both won races, and then at the track, everybody seems to fold their arms up and say, you know, geez, what's wrong with the Volvos? Nothing's wrong with the Volvos. They're doing fabulous, but they're still working through the teething problems. If I were anybody in World Challenge right now, Greg, I'd be worried about 2010, because when Bob Robb and these drivers get these cars sorted out, they're going to be very, very tough.
Absolutely right, and you have to give them, I think, a great amount of credit for being willing to test and develop rather publicly in races and not just privately in testing sessions. So well done indeed. Meanwhile, this battle continues to be a good one, but behind them, a battle starting to build for 7th spot as Rich Marziali and the beautiful blue all-cut concrete Viper right there coming into 5, feeling the pressure from Bill Ziegler and that Swisher Racing Porsche. Some great stuff. But Tom, earlier as Kern was marching his way through the pack, you noticed a unique technique.
Listen to his technique going through the carousel. There's a couple of ways to do this, but his is very unique. You pick up that on and off the throttle sound there. Eric Kern makes it work, and it got him through the 2 cars that you saw in front of him. Let's go back to this battle with Marzial and Ziegler.
Balancing the car on a tightrope in the carousel, using the throttle when you've got hundreds of horsepower. Yeah, good stuff indeed. Meanwhile, talk about the balancing act. How about flat out through the kink, wicked quick, and that battle continues to rage. As I talked about, Dino Crescentini under braking closes up just a little bit on Brandon Davis, and that's the slighter, lightweight car of Crescentini, not quite as powerful, closing up under braking, but then obviously Davis able to draw away a little bit with pure acceleration. And once again, the SEC rules makers have come up with an incredible balance here between this wide variety of equipment just in front of them. Kern drawing up the hill, but gone. Tony Rivera in that Taxmasters Porsche, what a day he is having. But this battle is for the final spot on the podium. It's key, and for Brandon Davis, it's really important in terms of those points.
I just love the contrast between these 2 cars. You see that big grunt and horsepower of Brandon Davis in the Mustang, and then going down into turn number 1, Dino Crescentini can make it all back under braking. Meanwhile, look at Daskalos and Randy Popst as these guys, not to be left out of this. Randy Popst always has a way of doing things right. Oh dear. Andy Pilgrim now into the pits, and we saw that starting to happen when Günther Schaldag spun, and evidently he'll be going behind the wall. Day is done for the K-Pax Racing Volvo of Andy Pilgrim.
It's a sad, sad way to end things, and 2 years in a row he's had mechanical problems that have taken him out of a finish here. And speaking of mechanical, by the way, the word from Kuno Whitmer, a broken wheel bearing. And meanwhile, Crescentini makes the move, tries to, down the inside into 5, and Davis saw him coming, left a little bit of room, and as a result, Dino was able to just skate through and picks up that spot. So now, Dino Crescentini up into 3rd, Brandon Davis in 4th. And Tom, I wonder, that was a fairly cautious move. Davis could have slammed the door shut, but huge risk with the points on the line.
So I'm thinking about points racing down here. What's Brandon got to lose? 1 position, maybe he's off the podium, but he's got to be thinking, let's keep accumulating points. And he could tell for a couple of laps that Dino Crescentini was determined. He was going to try to get that done. Why trade a little bit of paint and maybe jeopardize his championship? Brandon Davis has come a long way in the last 3 years. A very mature driver now, Greg.
Certainly is, and there is a look at the Toyo Tires leaderboard, and you'll notice that Jason Daskalos from 11th to 5th. Welcome back once again to the World Challenge Dish.com Road America Grand Prix presented by StopTech. And we have a great race unfolding here in the 8th round of the World Challenge GT Championship. Brian Kubinski, after those offs early, trying to work his way back up through the pack. There's Marziali, but Sonny Whelan in that Whelan Engineering Corvette, he started in 17th spot. They had some problems in qualifying, and he is on an absolute march up through the pack and is working his way. You see, he's gone around Ziegler, and he is now chasing Marziali. And that's going to have him knocking very firmly on the door of a top 10 finish here. There's Tony Gaples, who's taking a run at Ziegler. He's got a little bit better speed on that long straight, moves that beautiful Kleinschmidt Corvette down to the inside, and he is through. Now, can Ziegler make a counter move? Not quite. Gaples covers beautifully, and just in front, look at Whelan closing in on Marziali down into turn 3. Gaples in tow, then Ziegler, and then a recovering Brian Kubinski. So, again, back in the pack just a little bit. Some incredible racing everywhere, Tom.
And you see this all the time in World Challenge. You'd be mistaken to look just at the front because there's always some great racing. Bill Ziegler, all have done everything but clinch the Rookie of the Year honors in that 05 Swisher Racing Porsche, doing a great job in and of his own self. You know, to think that he'd be racing with guys like Tony Gaples as he came in here in his rookie year, you know, I'm sure he's very pleased about that. Meanwhile, Sonny Whelan still taking it to Rich Marzial. These guys very friendly in the paddock, but they're in an all-out battle on the track, Greg.
Well, and that's what they live for. Yeah, they're good buds, but when it comes to the race, and even if it's not a battle for a podium spot, you find somebody to race with, and that's when you really start to see the smile under the visor and the helmet. That's what this is all about, and Whelan having a absolutely superb race right now. Meanwhile, Tony Rivera comes up, picks up the white flag, a big margin for him right now. Just an absolute clocking of the field, putting on a bit of a clinic in that Taxmasters.com Porsche.
You know, he looks in the rearview mirror and he sees a lot of Kettle Moraine before he sees that next number 30 car. So he can basically relax here. But, you know, when you relax, bad things happen. Tony Rivera, one more lap to get it done for win number 2. The only driver this year to win 2 races. Oh, geez, Greg, did I just jinx him?
Oh, the announcer's nightmare, saying something and then having it all fall apart and then having the driver come after you because they know where you live. Hopefully that's not the case as we go back and watch this great battle. It's Marzial trying to fend off the Corvette of Whelan, the Corvette of Gaples, and the rest of the pack. Meanwhile, here you go. Tony Rivera, last time through turn 5, that climb up and under the bridge in turn 6, and Dino Crescentini has run down and caught Eric Kern. And Kern, you saw that car real loose as he comes out of turn 5. Dino turns in a little sooner into turn 6. That Porsche might be the stronger car right now, Tom.
You know, it just might be, Greg. You know, the Corvette and the Mustang have a tendency to burn off their rear tires, and Eric Kern has had a strong march up to the front. You know, Crescentini might just have a little more balance left in his Porsche than Eric Kern does in the Corvette, Greg.
And they're heading into that carousel one more time. Meanwhile, back to this battle. Marzial continues to be able to hang on down into turn 3, but look at Sonny Whelan close up at the apex of 3, get the drive out, and it's 2 big horsepower cars starting to drive up and underneath that Sargento Bridge. Gaples watching it with Ziegler right there. And by the way, in front of this group, Mike Borkowski making his full race debut, able to get on track in Gunter Schaldach's Viper, and he finds himself in a strong 8th spot right now. Then Marzial, then Whelan, then Gaples, then Ziegler in this great battle. Meanwhile, through turn 13 and up heading toward the final corner here at Road America, turn 14, and the climb up the hill by the concession stands, probably enjoying the smell of brats and corn roasting as he comes out of this turn. He's got some room, he's got the margin, and Tom, I think he is going to become the first repeat winner this year. There he comes over the rise, the checkered flag flies, and Tony Rivera, number 2.
He goes down the right side, so salute to his teammates as we see this battle finally finish up. And here's a surprise for you. Take a look at this. On the front straightaway, James Sophronis' Global Motorsports crew gets him back out on the track, and he does manage to finish the race. It's a matter of pride for the Global Motorsports Group boys.
Great job by them. Great job by Tony Rivera, who won an E-Production Sprints Championship here a few years ago. And in that race, he raced against a guy named Tom Thrash, a very dear friend. And at the sprints this year, Tom Thrash lost his life in an incident, and this is a special moment for Tony Rivera, to be sure. Let's go to Victory Circle.
An absolutely brilliant job. Once you were able to get by that big Dodge Viper, it seemed like you were in another postal code altogether.
You know, one of my biggest downfalls is I always watch the mirror, and I end up driving you drive where you're going. So if you're watching the mirror, that's where you're going. So, I kept telling myself, don't look in the mirror, don't look in the mirror, and it helped that there were no longer cars there, so I could just, focus in front of me. I'm going into corners, just counting my downshifts every single time, and just, try to keep the tires underneath the car. And, we tested on old tires all week, and, I kept complaining about the handling, and guys wanted to put the tires on the car, and I'm like, no, that's a Band-Aid. We got to get the car to handle with bad tires. So, I was persistent, and, it definitely paid off. It helps to have a good engineer and a great crew that, will put up with me.
And a great driver helps things pay off as well, and that means how about a swap in the points as he moves from third to second behind Davis, and the two Volvo drivers flip-flop as well. Manufacturer points, Porsche continues to lead over Ford and Chevy. Volvo and Viper are Auto Week move of the race. Mike Borkowski making his full race debut. There's a pass for 7th place in this one in the celebrations in Victory Circle. That means we have wrapped up the 8th round of the championship here at Road America, round 9 from Road Atlanta. Join us then.